Everyone at the wedding was dressed to impress, but one guest stood out for all the wrong reasons, at least in the eyes of the groom's family. When she walked in wearing a simple dress and quiet confidence, whispers spread like wildfire. Some sneered. Others laughed behind their champagne glasses. To them, she didn't look like someone who belonged at such a grand event. She was the bride's sister, and rumors were already circling. She's only here to find a rich husband, someone muttered. Probably a gold digger, another scoffed. No one knew her story, and no one cared to ask. But all of that changed. In a matter of minutes, as the vows were about to begin, a sleek black SUV pulled up. The mood shifted. Eyes turned. Out stepped a man in a tailored suit, flanked by quiet security. He didn't need to speak to command attention. His presence said it all. The laughter stopped. The smug smiles disappeared. And suddenly, the girl they mocked was at the center of everyone's curiosity. What happened next silenced the entire room and turned the judgment into pure shock. Because this wasn't just her brother. This was the man who would flip their world upside down. No. One at the wedding had expected a billionaire to show up, let alone walk straight toward the girl they'd been mocking. Phones slowly lowered, conversations paused mid-sentence, and curious glances turned into full stares. The groom's mother, who had just whispered something snide about her dress, looked visibly confused. Some of the bridesmaids exchanged awkward glances, suddenly unsure if they had made a huge mistake. The man's polished shoes echoed with each step as he approached, his sharp suit and calm demeanor impossible to ignore. She didn't flinch. She just looked up and gave a small smile, like she'd been expecting him all along. He leaned in, hugged her gently, and said something that only she could hear. Then he looked up at the crowd. He's calm, almost amused, and nodded politely. That single gesture sent a ripple through the room. Who was he? Why hadn't anyone heard about him before? And most of all, how was she connected to someone like that? The groom's father tried to keep his composure, but even he couldn't hide his curiosity. The family that once laughed now stood frozen, watching a story unfold that no one had prepared for. And what came next would change everything. As the ceremony preparations continued, whispers turned into speculation. Some guests tried to act casual, but their eyes kept drifting back to the mysterious man. A few even started searching his face online, hoping to connect the dots. The groom's sister, who had openly laughed earlier, now stood awkwardly silent, her expression stiff. She leaned over to her fiancé and muttered, "There's no way she could be related to him." But deep down, even she wasn't sure anymore. The bride, caught in the middle, had no idea what was going on. She loved her sister deeply, but had always known their family struggled while her in-laws came from wealth and status. She thought that teasing would be harmless. Now, standing in the middle of judgmental faces and a growing mystery, she started questioning everything. Why had her sister never mentioned this man before? Why had he shown up without warning at this moment of all times? The groom, proud and a little arrogant, didn't like the shift in energy. He noticed how people no longer looked at him the same way. All eyes were on the guest who hadn't even been on the invite list. Tension crackled in the air, and under all the fake smiles, a storm was quietly building. As the bride's sister quietly stood by, her presence once ignored now had the room buzzing. The billionaire's appearance had changed everything. Even the wedding planner, once impatient with her for being in the way, now treated her with sudden politeness. The groom's family tried to maintain their usual air of superiority, but it was clear they were rattled. They exchanged tense glances, each trying to figure out what they had missed. No one dared ask her directly. Instead, they clung to assumptions, hoping their status still held weight. Dinner was delayed. Guests murmured. At the head table, the groom's mother leaned close to her son. You didn't say anything about her being connected to that man? She whispered. He shrugged, clearly annoyed. I didn't know. No one did. The groom's voice was tight, and for the first time, there was a crack in his usual confidence. Then came the moment that pushed everything toward the edge. The billionaire stepped up to speak, not during the toast, but before it even began. His voice was calm, but every word seemed to land like a challenge. Before this wedding continues, he said, pausing as every guest fell silent, I think there's something you all deserve to know. The room froze, teetering on the edge of a secret no one was ready for. A heavy silence filled the room as all eyes locked onto him. Even the staff paused, frozen mid-step. The billionaire's tone stayed calm, but there was a sharpness beneath it, like he'd waited for this moment. Many of you made assumptions about my sister today, he said, his eyes scanning the room. Slowly, you judged her based on her clothes, her silence, and your own pride. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. The groom's mother looked pale, clutching her glass tightly. The groom sat rigid, his jaw clenched, clearly wishing he could turn back time. But just as the crowd prepared for a dramatic reveal, the tension cracked open further. A second luxury car pulled up outside, heads turned. This time, it was an older man, well-dressed, stern, and familiar to a few guests who gasped in recognition. He was a powerful business figure, someone often seen on magazine covers, known for steering multi-million-dollar deals. But what shocked everyone wasn't just his presence, it was the way he walked straight toward the billionaire and said, I didn't expect you to bring her into this. Now the focus shifted. Whispers turned into panic. A new layer of history had just surfaced, one that hinted at secrets, betrayals, and a past no one at the wedding had seen coming. The older man's words hit like a thunderclap. Guests stared, confused. The bride's sister kept her gaze low, her expression unreadable. The groom's family looked from one man to the other, now fully aware they were witnessing something far bigger than a wedding drama. The billionaire didn't flinch. He stepped closer and replied, You made it personal a long time ago. Today, I'm making it public. He turned back to the guests. This isn't just my sister, he said. She's also the rightful heir to the company. Your family tried to steal from ours years ago. Gasps echoed. The groom's father went stiff, his face drained of color. The older man shifted uncomfortably. You signed her name away before she was even old enough to know it. The billionaire continued. But she knows now, and so does the world. The bride grabbed her sister's hand, trembling. Everything made sense now, the sudden tension, the secrecy, the unspoken pain. And just when it felt like the room couldn't take any more, the unexpected happened. The groom stood, looked around at the family who'd lied, and quietly walked, awailing the wedding behind. He didn't look back. Because the truth had finally taken the spotlight, nothing would ever be the same again. After the groom left, silence lingered in the room like a heavy fog. No one dared to speak. Not even the groom's parents. The bride, shaken but clear-eyed, held her sister close. In that moment, it didn't matter how expensive the venue was or who wore what. The truth had surfaced, and the lies that held everything together had finally crumbled. The billionaire brother gently led his sister away from the center of attention. He hadn't come to show off, he came to protect her, to stand by her in a way no one else had. Some guests began quietly slipping out, unsure of what to say. Others stayed behind, whispering apologies they didn't know how to deliver. The bride later called off the wedding, not because she didn't love him, but because she realized love without honesty meant nothing. Her sister, once laughed at, was no longer the girl in the background. She was someone who had endured silence, judgment, and betrayal and still stood tall. The story spread far beyond the wedding that never happened, and the takeaway was simple but powerful. Never judge. Someone's worth by appearances. Because the one you look down on today might be the one who changes everything tomorrow.